Good evening to you and welcome to this epic edition of Ladies' Night here on News Sources. Tonight, just 2 days before the United Nations 16 Days of Activism, we examine just what it takes to be a woman in leadership. I am Julie Masiga.
Indeed, events over the past few days have shown that for a woman in politics, things are still as tough as they ever were. What will it take to level the playing field? My name is Sharon Momanya, and before we delve in, the highlights.
I repeat, withdraw this case, you prostitute, or you die.
What the donors are doing is like raping a woman who is already too willing.
Right, indeed. Welcome to the program. Now, Laikipia North Member of Parliament Matthew Lemporkel was yesterday a guest of state. The MP threatened nominated MP Sarah Korere, coming a day after the two clashed at the office of the president. Before his arrest, a threatening SMS written to him, to Korere, was read out to journalists by Nairobi woman representative Rachel Shebesh at a press briefing. Let's listen in.
We know you know what happened. We don't need to go in circles. But the last thing I want to say before I ask Mheshimiwa Sakaja to speak is that he went further. He went further and sent a message to Mheshimiwa Sarah yesterday evening after the incident. And I want to read it because I don't fear reading such messages, so that people can know the extent to which some of our male colleagues are going. This is what he sent her yesterday, and we've already reported this to the police station, and the police have even confirmed that this is the Member of Parliament's phone number. So he did not even bother to hide. That is how confident he is that he can get away with murder. He says, withdraw this case, you prostitute, or you die, idiot. Wewe malaya, enda ukashindane na wanawake, achana na politics. I repeat, withdraw this case, you prostitute, or you die. Now, even we just sit there, somebody has threatened you with death after they have just beaten you up in the Ministry of Internal Security. Do you think this guy is joking? He's not joking.
Indeed, the details of that text message as read out by the Nairobi women representative, very sensitive, and of course just bringing to focus an issue that has come time and again, that is of gender violence. And now I want to invite, or rather to present to you our panel tonight. We have a great panel. We have two lovely guests. On my immediate right is Rose Lukalo Owino. Rose is the founder and trustee of the Media Policy Research Center. Thank you for joining us tonight. We also have Daisy Amdan. Daisy is not new to our screen here at KTN. Daisy, of course, is the Executive Director of Crown Trust, yes, and also the Chair of the Women's Political Alliance Kenya. Very crucial and important, lovely guest we have for this crucial discussion we have tonight. So let's just begin with that, what we've had, Rachel Shebesh, there, and this case that is before us. You know, what happened at the Harambee House yesterday. Is this, and of course, we've had the details from both sides, for both the Laikipia North Member of Parliament and from Sarah Korere. What comes to your mind when you think about this, Rose?
Well, actually, given that next year is an election year, it's really not a surprise. Elections go with high stakes and people are fighting for space. Unfortunately, people go to extraordinary lengths. And when it comes to fighting women, the gender dimension cannot be avoided. Women are often, the role of women and participation of women is often seen as a threat to male dominance, a space that has traditionally been dominated by men. And let's face it, we're looking for power, not power for its own sake, but we must really appreciate the game, the stakes that we're playing for.
And are we getting into a space, Daisy, where gender violence is now becoming normal? You know, this is not the first time. Rachel Shebesh, we saw herself also being, slapped, the infamous slap by
head
Governor.
across Nairobi.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that one of the biggest tragedies is that violence against women has become so normalized, and that violence within our electoral process has become one of the hallmarks of the political process in Kenya. We know that one of the biggest deterrents that women face, even in participating in the electoral process, is violence. And violence is used as a tool against opponents. Now, it's that much worse because in a lot of our cultural settings, we have normalized violence. Violence against women is seen as a norm. It's not even considered a crime. You see, even when we call it violence against women, ordinarily, Sharon, if you were to send a threatening text message to anyone, you can be taken to court. You can be arrested on those grounds, you know, intimidation, threatening somebody's life. That in itself is cause for you to be charged, you know. Now, for a legislator to actually do that to another legislator, because, you know, she's a woman, yes, but she's also a member of parliament, you know, and that he can do it with that kind of confidence. You have to ask yourself, why? How is it that it is okay for him?
And
what
this
kind
is
of value system?
respectable members of the
Absolutely.
society.
Honorable members.
honourable
We
members,
call them
actually.
honorable
Right.
members of parliament. But then for me, the thing is this. Why is it that we're seeing women rising up against this? We should have seen action by now. By the time he hit that member of parliament in the office of internal security, he should have been arrested right there and then. That's assault, you know? And so that's the thing. You brought up the issue of Rachel Shebesh.
Yes.
When she was slapped. They said, you know, she had disrespected the governor, almost like he had cause to beat her. And so for me, it really goes to our value system as a country. What kind of values do we enshrine that it becomes okay and people scoring brownie points? Because this is not the first incident that we're seeing and definitely will not be the last. But we do not have punitive measures taken against people who meet violence against women. It's almost seen like violence against women is acceptable, you know?
If I can just throw a spanner in the works, because sources at the scene said that she might have thrown the first punch in this scenario, and she might have hit him, it's alleged, in the face with a shoe, and she had a group of people who were with her who he claims attacked him. So in this kind of situation where like a man and a woman are brawling, where should we fall? Should we fall on the side of the woman as the quote-unquote fairer sex? Or how do we handle this?
But I think the thing that the point that Daisy is raising is that in the case of an assault, the police should be there already.
Yes.
The fact that they are not already involved, they have not already investigated the situation, they have not actually reported back to us what happened and taken action against the party, the relevant party, whether it's both, whether it's one or the other, is critical. But I think in addition to that, we also need to look at the language that's being bandied around.
Yes.
You don't hear that language being, you would never hear it against a man, you know, and to put it in, you know, memorialize it in writing, you know, almost as if you know nothing will happen. That really, really, I think Kenya has grown
So as a
past
society,
there.
we excuse a lot of this kind of language used against the women and, you know, this kind of violence.
It's accepted.
It's accepted.
It's actually accepted. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal.
And that's really a shame, Daisy. I mean, when it goes that deep, you know, in our roots, then we have a few voices now speaking about, eradicating violence, the space of the woman in the society. Then the question becomes, where do we start this fight? Because it needs to be actually a fight of not just the woman, but both women and men. And we need to go to the next story now. But we'll confine this conversation further, I think, in the next subject.
As we go along, yes, but let's move on to affirmative action. And constitutional gender quotas have proven to be critical and effective way of enhancing women's participation and representation in political life. Countries such as Rwanda, South Africa, Tanzania, and Uganda have made commendable progress in this manner. Here at home, Parliament has failed twice to implement the two-thirds gender rule. Should we forge ahead, or are we overrepresented? Indeed, this is the thing that people say a lot, that we already have too many legislators. We do not need to give women a free pass to legislate some more. People actually do say this, that we have too many people purportedly making laws for us, and if we were to implement this gender rule, we might have to create extra room for extra women.
Julie, imagine in this so-called overrepresentation, women remain underrepresented.
Right, true.
So, if we're talking about overrepresentation, and if people are complaining that we have overrepresentation, the logical thing to do then would be then to reduce the numbers of the gender that is overrepresented, which would mean that let's reduce the number of men. But you see, this is an attack on women, even this narrative of overrepresentation, because we are a representative democracy. If the 40 million plus Kenyans want to be represented to a man, to a woman, that's fine, you know? But that is a lie, because they peg the overrepresentation issue to cost, okay? But then how do we talk about cost, particularly in Kenya, when we see mind-boggling amounts of money stolen? We call it corruption, but it's actually theft of public funds, okay? In the hundreds of billions of shillings going missing. So you tell me, are we then saying as a country that we would rather fund corruption than fair representation?
But then when you talk about elective positions, like for MP and whatnot, how do you ensure that people on the ground vote for women if you're not creating like the women's rep position where you can only vote for a woman? How do you ensure in elective positions that we have a balance of male and female if the electorate is hell-bent on electing men?
Well, I think it's a systemic issue. Women are seeking representation in a structure that is just dominated by male-dominated structures. Whether you talk about the police, whether you talk about ownership of the media, whether you talk about representation in government, every institution that women are going to go to in the walk to get elected is male-dominated and has that patriarchal flavor.
Yes.
Look at the political parties. 100 times, I mean, they will mouth, support for women as an election gimmick. But if you look at the reality of what happens in the party structures, it's just as rotten as anything else. Look at budgeting, and allocation of budgets to political parties is supposed to kind of match representation. The party lists are supposed to be reflective of our country.
Yes.
None of this is implemented. So really, it's not just getting women into politics. We're looking at a systemic thing that we need to unpackage and make it fair. And I think we need really to have a conversation where we understand that we're not putting women into elected position for the sake of having them there. There is something that they bring to the process.
That's a good question.
And that is missing.
That you bring, Rose. That is there a different perspective then that women should bring actually to politics? Is there something that they ought to do different so that we need to campaign for more of them? Should there be a different touch in women, leadership?
Let me say this. First of all, I want to say that I think the tone of how the narrative around women's representation must change, okay? Because one of the things that the Constitution envisioned is a more equitable society. Remember, we changed our Constitution because our former systems were exclusive and they excluded several people. Among those groups are women, youth, and persons with disabilities. And therefore, our Constitution has put in place the requirement that mechanisms be put in place to include these groups. Why? Because the patriarchal structures that are part of our socialization do not foster the inclusion of these groups. Therefore, the Constitution has now put in place those measures. So it's not so much even about having women elected. We have women elected because of the law. The 47 seats, which are affirmative action seats, ensure that even in places where a woman would never be elected because of the structures that are in place, the women are elected because the law says that you must have a representative and she must be a woman. The whole idea also is so that we may change the way power works. Okay? Because it is, as Rose has said, politics and power is about decision making. And it's about decision making about resource allocation, prioritization of development projects, where the money goes, who gets the money, what, where, and how. Now, if you have the voice of women absent, then you only have one perspective. So when you have the women on board, because it's not just about making the place more beautiful by having the women there. It's about also bringing in their perspectives, okay? So that women's perspectives are brought to bear on the development agenda, on the budgeting processes, on the prioritization of, development agenda. And I think that is something that we must look at in terms of being able to foster a more equitable society.
Daisy, and we'll be seeking to get your analysis of what you think about the current, representation and the women we have now. Do they play this card well? And we'll get that perspective.
I think that, no, Sharon, that is not a fair question, because women go in and they legislate together with men.
Right.
They do not operate in a vacuum, okay? And so if this question is being asked of women, we must ask it also of men.
Right.
You cannot say, what value addition do women bring? Right. What value addition are all of them bringing, Because it's not just about women.
Right.
Women
it's about leadership.
It's about leadership.
Not the
Precisely.
gender that is on the front.
Yes.
All right, let's just fine-tune this discussion further. And now, when women speak out against ill treatment or defend fellow women who accuse men of sexual assault or harassment, they are accused of playing the woman card. Women are attacked either verbally or physically on account of their gender, but are not allowed to call it what it is. So what does playing the woman card really mean? We've had this over. It's a tone that is very common in our society.
Especially recently.
You know?
Yes.
Yes, in the recent, turnout
who is
of
accusing?
events.
Who is accusing?
Because we even...
Mostly the men are accusing us of playing the women card. But my point would be that we are women, and that would be one card we always have in our pocket by virtue of our gender and our sex. But when somebody's attacking you based on your womanhood, then how do you defend yourself if you can't raise that fact?
Well, I mean, I think we have to confront it squarely.
Right.
It's a tactic. This is a political game. We said it again and again. It's a power play. And the effort, if we understand it, is to silence.
Absolutely.
Silence women, to make you feel like you're being troublesome, don't raise those issues, and to deflect from the issue that's being raised, just, brushing the woman aside and saying, playing a card. I mean, what other card can she play? She is a woman. She's speaking about her experience. And if you don't take that seriously, it's intimidation. It's intimidation.
Right.
Absolutely intimidation.
So how do we change this voice, Daisy? Because it's very systemic.
It is, but you see, the thing is, we go back to the same thing. Why is it a woman card or the gender card when it is something unacceptable?
Right.
We have to have a standard of acceptability. How do we engage? What kind of language is acceptable to be used by both men and women, okay?
Right.
Because, you see, it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, that there's a sense of the normalization of, treating women in a certain way.
And speaking about them in a certain way.
Yes, and speaking about them in a certain way. And when they rise to defend themselves, it is called the gender card.
Right.
Okay? But what women have to defend themselves somehow, because the state is not defending them. The political class are not defending them. They are violating them, and they are making that violation acceptable. I will not be surprised to see this issue of Sarah Korere take now political undertones, political connotations, where people will begin to take sides, on the basis of, parties and whatever. It's just like the language that was used against Esther Passaris when you go to social media. It was shocking. People were congratulating Miguna for the way he spoke to her. And what did he accuse her of? She is a competitor in the race for governor. And he tells her, you are nothing. You are nothing more than just light skin, and that you look for sponsors. This is an accomplished businesswoman. Right. This with woman, Esther Passaris, has a track record. She has blazed the trail, innovation in business. She has employed hundreds of Kenyans. Yet, for some people, it becomes acceptable just because she has sought public office and she is challenging the male structures of power, that suddenly she has become a light-skinned woman seeking billionaire sponsors.
But I've heard some people say, sorry to interrupt, that as a politician you should grow a thick skin, whether you're male or female, and be able to deflect or absorb all these insults and just carry on because it's the nature of the game.
The Electoral Code of Conduct the Electoral Code of Conduct actually forbids engaging in that manner. So it's actually a violation of the Electoral Code of Conduct. We're not supposed to personalize issues. The democracy is a marketplace of ideas. Everybody has a right to come and sell their ideas, their ideologies, and to be judged on that basis. Not on the basis whether I'm a woman or whether I'm light-skinned, whether I have a sponsor, whether I don't. And this is a problem because I see even the way women package themselves, you know. You look at the way women package themselves for office. Jipange na mama, jipange na supu wa this nini, you know. Exactly. You see, and that also, this perpetuates, it perpetuates that.
That's true. Rose, what's your take on this?
Beyond that, I think it's also, it goes back to talking about who are we as Kenyans? Is that how we present ourselves? Really? Are those our values? And I think we need to hold our leaders to account when they behave like that. Because they are seeking from us the mandate to represent us. Is that the representation of a Kenyan?
But then when, a Kenyan woman,
for that Kenyan woman,
quite a number of sympathizers with his, you know, his line of thinking, then how can you put to account, you know, actually a reflection of your own thoughts?
Yes.
So it goes back to the all same thing of.
I don't think we're losing ground. Even a conversation like the one we are having a few years ago would not have happened. And so the fact that we keep having this conversation, I've seen the gentleman in question backtracking and threatening to sue the station and all sorts of stuff. We must keep that pressure up, and we must call out that action anytime and everywhere where we see it, you know? The fact that it's happening and the fact that it's in the public domain, I think we are making progress.
But it's a national conversation.
It's a national conversation.
Oh, it's a national conversation.
Concern.
But it also needs the government to step in and actually, you know, we have laws. We actually have laws against this kind of behavior. We need to see punishment. For as long as people know there's going to be no consequence and no consequence. And that's the thing, in Kenya, there have actually been no consequences against violence. So we reward impunity.
Interrupt you, sorry, Daisy, and just move this conversation forward, because now we're talking about Meru Senator Kiraitu Murungi, made that infamous statement about a man being unable to rape a woman who was already willing. Many who heard him speak thought nothing of it, but the idea that women can somehow be raped is pervasive. Should female politicians expect sexual violence as par for the course?
What the donors are doing is like raping a woman who is already too willing.
That laugh, I have never forgotten that laugh. Like I don't know how even to describe like the sentiment behind it, because he felt like he was just speaking about something which, like we have been saying, is an acceptable sentiment, an acceptable way to express yourself, and acceptable thing to happen to women. You know, in that context of, let me not even this trend. Read what I mean, go into his thought process. But the idea that it's so casual, it was so casually thrown out there, and then there was a laugh behind it, is again normalizing the whole idea that violence against women is not such a big deal.
Not just violence, sexual violence against women. Because rape is sexual violence. And rape has been used as a tool to terrorize women. Even we look at, and we're not even just talking about at the political level. Let's look at some of the stories that you cover in the media, where you have a woman who has probably left her husband because she was in an abusive relationship, and the man, to avenge or to revenge against this woman, will rape his own children. He will rape his own children. For instance, this evening, the allegations that administration officer has actually raped and defiled a young girl, a 14-year-old girl. Activists who have gone to demand to see the OB charge were actually arrested by the police for coming to inquire about it, so that there is no outrage. There is no outrage, even within law enforcement. We hear of law enforcement officers who actually rape victims who go to report. So for me, really, this is a value issue.
Right.
You know, what kind of a value system does a nation have where somebody who is a law enforcement officer or a leader can speak so, or an aspiring leader, can speak so casually about rape, which is an offense against the person, you know, and this is a terrible thing.
Right.
He has, Miguna was not sanctioned. You know, he says that, Esther Passaris raised the issue before, you know, there was a penalty. I mean, when Kiraitu made that statement, activists actually went to eject him from his office.
Up to 2016, some leaders still believe that only beautiful women are raped, or imply that you're so beautiful, therefore people want to rape you. So people
that it's acceptable.
That is acceptable, and that it's pegged on something about you.
Right.
But
I think also it also has to do with the whole framing of women's sexuality,
Right.
and the traditional role that women are expected to play. So I mean, I think we're contesting that space.
Right.
And I think I recall when Ngugi wa Thiong'o's wife, Professor Wadiongo's wife, was raped.
Right.
I was so touched when she came out and spoke, you know, publicly about it. And it really touched me, and it said, it kind of concerns me that we're not doing enough to remove the stigma from those who are raped,
the victims,
from the victims, and in doing so, we perpetuate this kind of shame about women's sexuality. And it's supposed to be hidden, it's not supposed to be discussed,
or they don't even have a right to personal agency to decide for themselves who will have their way with me. I mean, we know that there are some cultures where to get a wife, you actually rape the girl, you identify the girl of your choice, and your expression of desire for her, or that you want to take her to be your wife, is to waylay her and rape her. This is a cultural practice, and it is acceptable.
And we even see some sort of thought processes that we excuse here about people trying to pin, the reason why it should actually blame the victim of being
exactly.
It's actually
remember that they dress in a certain manner, but then if you rape an infant, what excuse will you bring there? Or even marital rape, for that matter, because I remember during the Sexual Offences Bill, when it was being formulated, that was one of the issues that activists wanted in that bill. But they refused. They were like, how can you rape your wife? But we know that women are raped even in marriage.
Okay, let's hold that thought, Daisy. We have to go for a break now. But before we do that, let's engage you on our Twitter poll tonight. And we are asking you, do you think that our society is making it difficult for women leaders to thrive? Do you think that our society is making it difficult for women leaders to thrive? Do tweet us your thoughts at KTN News, at Julie Masiga, and at Sharon_Momanyi. We shall be reviewing some of your thoughts and tweets during this bulletin. We now take a short break. Don't go too far. More when we return.